A secret couple, looking for privacy, make a horrifying discovery behind a log that blocks their path. They see a woman in severe distress.
She'd been shot in the head. She was only wearing panties, socks, and the waffle stomper boots.
After a vicious attack, she's still alive, but unable to talk.
This woman has a bullet wound above her right ear, which very likely has impacted her ability to speak.
Walter and Kathy are in a state of shock at their discovery and waste no time getting the young woman into their car.
The couple rush the woman to a hospital, but she's declared dead on arrival.
I lost my closest friend that day.
Police round up every suspect they can find, but there's no evidence to point at any of them.
All law enforcement has at this point is circumstantial evidence. They have pieces of information that may suggest there is an opportunity for the suspect to have been the killer. But is there motive? Is there concrete evidence? They have nothing.
This particular case was obviously done by a stranger. When a stranger commits this kind of crime and you run out of leads, you're at a point where, is it even solvable anymore? It's probably unsolvable.
It would take decades for police to realize the potential of a key piece of evidence, waiting to unlock the case.
The unsolved ones, we have to stand up
and approach these cases in a way outside the box.
Let the world know, for those out there that did commit a murder, there are people that are coming after you.
There's just a lot of good people trying to do the right thing.
Because it's something that you have to be passionate about.
Solve this, bring some peace to the family at least. I was just doing my job.
Snohomish County, Washington, 20 minutes north of Seattle. It's known as the heart of the Pacific Northwest. The area boasts a growing tech sector, aerospace industry, and modern agriculture, along with a population of nearly 1 million.
Snohomish was a quiet place where kids could play. It was rural. People rode horses and did simple things for fun.
But in 1972, development hasn't reached the area yet. There are plenty of places in the county where no one can see you. 33-year-old Walter Morris and 18-year-old Kathy Gogel pull into a secluded part of a forest in Snohomish County.
It's not entirely clear what Kathy and Walter are doing in the forest. They tell police they were going to practice shooting Walter's .22 caliber rifle, but it's also a good place to spend their time together since they were keeping their relationship a secret.
Turning off Penny Creek Road, Walter and Kathy are blocked by a downed tree and stop the car to move it. Behind the tree, they see a woman in severe distress.
It was by chance that they found her there.
The young woman is almost entirely nude, clutching her bra in her hand. She's still alive, but unable to talk.
This woman has a bullet wound above her right ear, which very likely has impacted her ability to speak.
They observed that she'd been shot in the head. They saw that there was a lot of semen in her underpants. She was only wearing panties, socks, and the waffle stomper boots. She was actually thrashing a little bit. They thought that they could save her.
Walter and Kathy are in a state of shock at their discovery and waste no time getting the young woman into their car.
The girl held Jodie's clothing up over her to cover her body and held her head up to keep her airway open while they drove to the hospital as quickly as they could to get her some help.
Time is of the essence, given the condition the young woman is found in. She has a gunshot wound to the head and is unable to speak.
The couple rush the woman to a hospital, but she's declared dead on arrival. County sheriffs are alerted of the crime and begin looking for a killer.
Normally, when you go to a crime scene, you try not to go in and disturb anything. So the initial patrol people cordon everything off to keep everybody out. And then when the detectives arrived, they go through methodically trying to process everything without disturbing anything. So the first thing they're going to do is take photographs of the entire area and look for evidence as they move in.
When the police are notified of this crime, there's very little to go on. All they can do is canvass the area and ask people if they see the young woman before she's murdered.
Investigators talk to a 14-year-old young woman who works at a fruit stand on her family's property, which is along Jodie's route to the stable.
Kenda tells the police she remembers a young woman on a 10-speed bike riding by that day. The young woman would sometimes buy fruit for her horse on the way up to the stables, located a few miles up the road. And she remembered the boots the woman was wearing that day, which struck Kenda as unusual for a person riding a bike.
While scouting the area, police find a white 10-speed bike not far from where the woman was found. As the area is flooded with deputies, police question the owner of the stables, who gives them the name they've desperately been searching for.
The owners of the stable piece together that the young woman police are looking for could be 20-year-old Jodie Lumis.
By the time police arrive at the doorstep of Jodie Lumis's house, she has already been missing for several hours.
Her mother had given her a dime to call home if she was going to be late, but that call never came, so everyone in the house was under intense stress.
I noticed that my mom and dad, they had a funny look on their face, and they were like, Jodie should have been home quite a while ago, and we haven't heard from her. A knock came on the door, and it was a detective, and said, we think we have your daughter. My mom went down to the ground, and my dad, before my dad could even get to her, that's a moment. There's those moments everybody has in their life, and that's one for me. The last thing my mom made sure of was, did she have that dime in her pocket? You know, we always had to carry a dime with us in case we ever needed to make a call. I was 12 years old when we lost Jodie, and my world changed. I lost my closest friend that day.
Jodie lives in a house with her parents and sister Jana, along with her fiancé, Jim.
By all accounts, Jodie is a kind, free spirit who thinks for herself.
If she loved you, and that didn't mean she wouldn't be mad at you in the next moment, but she loved you.
Jodie is an animal lover and a talented artist.
I really appreciate what she was able to do.
In the early 1970s, brown suede boots with a thick waffle-shaped sole became a fashion trend. The so-called waffle stomper boots may have been worn for a sunny August day, but Jodie wears them anyway.
Jodie's petite and has the same shoe size as her sister, so she borrows her sister's boots.
If she hadn't worn those boots, who knows whether the girl at the fruit stand would have noticed Jodie ride past on her bike that day.
Police investigate the hours leading up to Jodie's horrific attack in the forest. Jodie leaves her home on her bicycle in the afternoon of August 23rd.
My mom would often drive Jodie, but she was getting into bicycling with her fiance and was trying to get in better shape so she could keep up with him. And so she decided to ride her bike to her horse pasture and get that extra exercise.
Jodie's horse, Saudi, is located at the stables, 6.5 miles north of the family home. Jodie makes a stop at her friend's house, Linda Hook. Linda's family is one of many who are leaving Snohomish County in search of better opportunities. When Jodie knocks on her door, Linda's packing to go to California and won't go horseback riding with Jodie.
The feeling that they could have been there to prevent what happened to Jodie is a heavy emotion for a friend to carry. Although it wasn't her fault, those pervasive what-if thoughts can be difficult to silence.
Kenda tells police she remembers Jodie taking a little extra pause before continuing on her bike.
It's unclear why she pauses. Perhaps Jodie sees something that makes her hesitate. Or perhaps she's a couple of miles into a 6-mile bike ride and simply needs to catch her breath.
Jodie is found by Walter and Kathy at 5:30 p.m., suffering from the gunshot that would ultimately kill her.
Police determined that Jodie was attacked while riding her bike towards the stables, sometime between when she's seen at the fruit stand and when she's discovered.
I felt like she was so smart, but I felt like she was quick to say, I don't like you, get out of here, and then that could have triggered something in the murder.
With somewhat limited information to go on, Snohomish investigators continue to push hard to find who did this to Jodie Lumis.
Jodie Lumis is riding her bike on the way to the stables, where her horse is boarded.
Jodie has been missing for several hours at this point, so everyone in the house was under intense stress.
Jodie should have been home quite a while ago, and we haven't heard from her.
Jodie is found by Walter and Kathy at 5:30 p.m.
She'd been shot in the head. She was only wearing panties, socks, and the waffle stomper boots.
Walter and Kathy are in a state of shock at their discovery and waste no time getting the young woman into their car.
The couple rush the woman to a hospital, but she's declared dead on arrival.
Investigators talk to a 14-year-old young woman who works at a fruit stand on her family's property, which is along Jodie's route to the stable.
Kenda Rice tells police she remembers Jodie on her bike that afternoon, appearing a bit hesitant or nervous. Jodie stops on her bike for a moment, as though she might be unsure where to go.
Kenda tells police she remembers that pause as being odd and memorable. Police look into the possibility that Jodie might have felt she's being followed.
The crime is shocking to everyone, especially in such a quiet, rural place. The effects of this stress on a community can be substantial and would have caused deep trauma on Jodie's friends and family.
When she's found, Jodie is not clothed, except her knee-high socks, her boots, and underwear. She's clutching her bra and her clothing is beside her. An autopsy reveals Jodie is being raped.
Ballistics indicate that Jodie is shot from above by a .22 caliber pistol.
The bullet wound is located above Jodie's right ear.
It was surmised that she was probably sitting on the ground tying her left boot when she was shot in the head by her assailant.
Police scramble to determine if this random act is premeditated and whether Jodie may have known her killer.
In some cases, everyone becomes a suspect.
Detectives consider whether they might already have interviewed Jodie's killer.
They look for connections to her rape and murder that they may have missed. Police question the man who brings Jodie to the hospital, Walter Morris. They also question Jodie's father, John.
The added trauma of feeling suspected of your own daughter's rape and murder is unimaginable.
Police have to be thorough and can't rule out anyone at this point, including her own father.
The police wonder if somebody on the 1,000-acre farm property may have stumbled upon Jodie and acted in a crime of opportunity.
Investigators add to the list of suspects 13-year-old Alan Rice.
Alan Rice is the son of the family who owns the 1,000-acre farm where the fruit stand is located. He has been with his father all day, cutting wood in the nearby area.
Mr. Rice was there with his son cutting firewood in that area. They were initially contacted and interviewed and needed to be ruled out as possible suspects because they were in the area.
Alan tells police he was apart from his father on various areas of the property, cutting large amounts of firewood for the coming fall.
The boy tells police that he passes by the area where Jodie is attacked several times over the course of August 3rd. If he saw or did something that day, he's not admitting it to the police.
Snohomish County sheriffs fan out their investigation, searching for answers everywhere, including an area biker gang called the Reapers Roadmen.
The Reapers Roadmen have a clubhouse not far from the scene of Jodie's murder. One member of the gang, named Yamaha, is known to possess a .22 caliber pistol.
Local residents make police aware of Yamaha using his weapon to fire at trains as they pass through town. It's enough of a connection to add Yamaha's name to the list of possible suspects.
Inexplicably, much of the evidence, including the panties that could now yield so much DNA material, has been lost.
Years later, when I looked at the case, all of that evidence had disappeared. We couldn't find her panties, we couldn't find the swabs, we couldn't find the slides that they examined the spermatozoa on, so all that evidence had just disappeared.
Key pieces of evidence, like the bullet retrieved from Jodie and her socks, are gone forever. Documents are also lost over the years.
One piece of evidence that is still in police custody: the boots that Jodie wore that fateful day.
All law enforcement has at this point is circumstantial evidence. They have pieces of information that may suggest there is an opportunity for the suspect to have been the killer. But is there motive? Is there concrete evidence? They have nothing.
Police wonder if Jodie Lumis knew her killer at all, or if it was just a random act. Perhaps she pedaled right into a trap, laid out by a devious predator lurking in the Washington woods.
With only sparse information in this case, there's no way to tell how Jodie encountered her attacker. It's going nowhere for police, and the case is growing cold.
Initially, the community is very alarmed when they hear that something like this happened. And that's why oftentimes now the police will say that the community's not in danger because this is an isolated incident, based on the circumstances involved in people that knew each other. But when you have a case like Jodie Lumis, where she's killed by a stranger, then the whole community gets alarmed. They start locking their doors more and being more careful than they used to, because back in 1972, people left their doors open.
The rape and murder of 20-year-old Jodie Lumis goes unsolved.
This particular case was obviously done by a stranger. When a stranger commits this kind of crime and you run out of leads, then, you're at a point where, is it even solvable anymore? It's probably unsolvable.
It would take decades for police to realize the potential of a key piece of evidence, an item that hadn't disappeared and had been sitting in their possession all along, waiting to unlock the case.
"20-year-old Jodie Lumis gets on her bike to make the 6-mile trek to the stables where her horse is boarded. She would only get halfway through the forested area before she's attacked. a couple happens to discover Jodie and rush her to the hospital. But it's too late.
I was 12 years old when we lost Jodie, and my world changed. I lost my closest friend that day.
Police round up every suspect they can find, but there's no evidence to point at any of them.
Key pieces of evidence are also lost over the years.
We couldn't find her panties, we couldn't find the swabs. So all that evidence had just disappeared.
One piece of evidence that is still in police custody: the boots that Jodie wore that fateful day.
With police unable to clear names for years, Jodie's parents and sister have to learn how to cope with an overwhelming lack of closure. It's hard to imagine being a 13-year-old who has to make sense of this, never having the answers you crave.
The case remains unsolved, and the file goes relatively unchanged for more than 35 years. In 2008, police breathed new life into the case, as Jodie's murder is featured in a deck of cold case playing cards that Snohomish County Police distribute to prison inmates.
For years, the U.S. military gave troops a deck of most wanted enemy cards. Around 2007 and 2008, the idea took off across many states to give prison inmates a deck of unsolved murder cards to see if anyone had information.
Jodie's case is the oldest cold case in this deck of cards.
Something happens, and then you're like, oh, maybe that could make a difference. And that's what 2008 brought for us. There was some hope.
Law enforcement hopes to uncover new information behind bars. For this particular case, the playing cards come up empty. That same year, members of the Snohomish County Cold Case Unit send evidence from Jodie's murder to the State Crime Lab for an examination.
The evidence has been looked at by forensic scientists a number of times over the years. But this time, a lab technician finds a key piece of evidence that has been under their noses for 36 years.
The crime lab discovers a small semen stain on the waffle stomper boot.
This becomes an important discovery in 2008 because of DNA technology that is now available to law enforcement. But it would have been meaningless to investigators in 1972. Back then, DNA analysis would have seemed like science fiction.
They take a sample of the stain for DNA analysis. They determine the DNA of the man's semen, but also discover DNA that matches Jodie's DNA mixed with a male's DNA. This confirms that it is the DNA of the man who had intercourse with Jodie. It's very likely the DNA of their killer.
The DNA information breaks the case open.
The men who were suspects in 1972 give DNA samples to clear their names through comparison with the semen found on Jodie's boot. At the same time, the DNA is sent to CODIS.
CODIS, the Combined DNA Information System, is a nationwide stockpile of DNA samples taken from convicted felons, missing persons, and crime scenes. It is created and maintained by the FBI since 1998. Alan Rice, now in his 50s, is cleared of any involvement. So is Walter Morris, who found Jodie after the attack. And the biker gang theory loses steam.
Jodie's father passes away in 2005 before DNA can point them to Jodie's murderer.
After a cross-reference with the millions of DNA samples in the CODIS database, investigators come up empty.
They can't find a DNA connection with someone else in the databank. There's nowhere to go with the file, and it becomes a cold case.
It would be another decade before police finally linked their DNA evidence with the suspect. A famous case involving a serial rapist and killer in California gives Snohomish County Police a new weapon in their arsenal.
With the availability of DNA home kits to establish genealogy and build family trees, law enforcement sees an opportunity to use genetic genealogy for criminal investigations. You can find relatives of the criminal partial matches, which can lead to the DNA match.
The Golden State Killer case in California is the first example of genetic genealogy being used to solve a murder.
California law enforcement linked DNA from a rape kit to a close relative of Joseph James DeAngelo, who was responsible for at least 13 murders, 50 rapes, and 120 burglaries in the 1970s and 80s.
Before DNA technology came along, you needed a smoking gun, a fingerprint, or an eyewitness. Now you can connect those dots on a molecular level using genetic genealogy. Even when a close family member is found through this technique, police still have to have a DNA match. That means finding a sample from the accused and matching it with existing DNA evidence.
Despite law enforcement and genetic experts finding a relative, there would still be plenty of follow-up investigating to do.
You just had the Golden State Killer, you just had some things breaking open, and I felt like, wow, this is breaking ground. Jodie's case was so incredibly old. What were the odds that we'd be able to find him?
Could the DNA from Jodie's boot lead them to a family member of her killer? "20-year-old Jodie Lumis leaves home on her bike one August morning in 1972, never to return. She would only get halfway through the forested area before she's attacked.
I lost my closest friend that day.
After exhausting all leads in this case, police run out of places to go. The investigation goes cold for decades.
Key pieces of evidence are also lost over the years.
We couldn't find her panties, we couldn't find the swabs. So all that evidence had just disappeared.
That same year, members of the Snohomish County Cold Case Unit send evidence from Jodie's murder to the state crime lab for an examination.
The evidence has been looked at by forensic scientists a number of times over the years.
This time, they get a hit.
46 years later, Snohomish County Cold Case officers get a phone call from the genetic genealogist. Finally, after nearly 50 years, police close in on a suspect. The Ancestry database links the DNA from Jodie's boot to the parents of 6 brothers. But one brother in particular immediately stands out for police: Terrence Miller.
It was really weird when we heard the name. I thought for sure I was going to recognize the name, and it didn't mean anything to me at all.
Terrence Miller does not have a criminal record, so he wouldn't be listed in CODIS.
However, he had a number of run-ins with the law, and many of those incident reports involved sexual impropriety. But no charges were ever filed.
Police quickly gather information on Terrence Miller. He was accused of sex crimes several times in his life, some of those times with family members. And he lived just 5 miles away from the wooded area where Jodie Lumis is found in 1972. Police stake out Miller's home, where he and his wife of 43 years operate a ceramics shop.
They're hoping he will leave a sample of his DNA behind so they can see if it's a match with evidence they already have.
August 2018. police conduct surveillance on Terrence Miller, hoping he will leave behind a piece of DNA that will fully match the DNA from Jodie's boot.
Police are desperate to acquire DNA from this suspect. Hair, saliva, anything, and he will not give it up willingly.
He probably knows he's being followed and they're after his DNA. He's got to be sweating over that. He can't leave DNA evidence behind.
For Jodie Lumis's family, time is of the essence.
My mom got to know that they were going to be making an arrest and that it was close, and the detective had that time with her to let her know that he was working as fast as he could and getting as much done.
Her mom was disabled and bedridden. I can recall going there and talking to them several times prior to the point where we could get it solved. It was important to let her know that we were working on the case and it wasn't forgotten.
Sadly, Rosemary Lumis would pass away in January 2019 at the age of 91.
I felt really bad that we weren't able to go and tell her, hey, he's behind bars. Jana had told her mom that it's getting close. So her mom, I think, was at peace when she died.
We didn't make it to the arrest with my mom, but it was enough for her to know that they were narrowing it in and that it would be made.
It won't be until Terrence visits a local casino that he slips up and leaves them a sample of biological material.
You want to get your best DNA evidence from something that has saliva on it, because there's a lot of good DNA in saliva.
All scientists need is less than a gram of genetic material. We're talking a number of cells, and it can be from dead skin, dried saliva, or anything from a person's body. The dried saliva from a coffee cup can be used to identify the person who's been drinking from it.
Now that they have a DNA sample from Terrence Miller, they send it back to the lab for analysis to ensure it matches the DNA extracted from the boot, and to answer the question, is Terrence Miller Jodie Lumis's killer?
As police await results of the DNA analysis, they continue their investigation with a visit by undercover detectives to the Miller residence. Inside the ceramics shop, there are stacks of newspapers used to wrap items. A number of newspapers contained stories about violent crimes, specifically about DNA evidence and cold cases. But one newspaper laying out on the table gets the attention of law enforcement.
It's a newspaper from 7 months earlier with a headline about a previous arrest made using genetic genealogy.
Using genetic genealogy, Snohomish County Sheriffs arrest William Talbot for the unsolved 1987 rape and double murder of a young Canadian couple, Tanya Van Coilenberg and Jay Cook.
In the 1987 case, Tanya is shot in the head after being raped. Police use DNA from a semen stain and match it to DNA discarded by Talbot more than 30 years later.
We had undercover detectives go into his wife's business to try to see what they could learn that could connect him to Jodie's crime. And they found that newspaper sitting out on a table in her ceramic business. He held on to that for 7 months, knowing that we had the tools that could catch him.
The Golden State Killer pleads guilty, so a court has never tried and convicted using evidence from genetic genealogy. Prosecutors are in uncharted territory with this case.
With the saliva DNA on the coffee cup matching the DNA on the boot, Detective Scharf is confident that Terrence Miller is the killer.
In April, a judge issues a warrant for the arrest of Terrence Miller, now 77 years old. He's charged with first-degree murder.
After I arrested him, I found out that he had been on a bowling league with my brother for 6 or 7 years. So it finally hit home that here I had been on Washington's Most Wanted, telling Terry Miller that I had his DNA and I'm coming after him. And he's going to bowling every Monday night, looking at my brother's face that looks similar to mine, knowing that that guy's brother is after me. I hope he lost a lot of sleep over that.
Rosemary Lumis dies just 3 months before Miller is arrested. Terrence Miller tells police he didn't know Jodie Lumis.
Innocent until proven guilty. This case is 47 years old. The accused denies everything, and prosecutors are using unprecedented technology. This case is far from over.
And a disturbing event during the trial will send shockwaves through everyone involved. Using DNA from a discarded coffee cup, Snohomish County sheriffs believe they have the man responsible for the rape and murder of Jodie Lumis 47 years earlier. They matched the DNA with a semen stain found on the boot Jodie was wearing the day she was killed in 1972. Terrence Miller's wife of 43 years looks on as her husband is charged with first-degree murder. He's free on $1 million bond.
At this point, Terrence Miller is 77 years old and not considered a flight risk, especially not with the bail set so high.
By the time the case against Terrence Miller goes to trial, William Talbot is found guilty of murder, and a precedent is set. That's hopeful news for prosecutors, but the burden on the prosecution is still huge. There's a mountain to climb here.
While the prosecution brings forward its evidence, the defense points out that the burden of proof is on prosecutors to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Terrence Miller is guilty. The defense questions the integrity of the entire case, suggesting that there's not enough to convict Terrence Miller of the crime.
The job of the defense attorney is to poke holes in the prosecution's case. With key pieces of evidence missing, be it from willful destruction of the evidence or things being lost as they're rearranged, these are holes in the case the prosecution must overcome to get a guilty verdict. The prosecution basically tells the jury that science doesn't lie. They show the DNA evidence from the boot to the coffee cup and how they made the match, and then let the jury decide.
November 2020. Both sides complete their closing arguments, and the jury deliberates. But Terrence Miller takes justice into his own hands, just hours before the jury is expected to come back with its verdict.
The trial ended on a Friday and the jury went out to deliberate. I think he saw the handwriting on the wall that Monday he was going to be found guilty. So that Monday morning, before he came to court, he went into the backyard and somewhere he'd gotten a .22 revolver and shot himself in the head instead of coming to court to be found guilty.
We were getting ready to go in the courtroom, and one of the detectives walked in and had this funny look on her face, and she said, I've got some news to tell you, and Terry Miller won't be there. He just took his life this morning.
Immediately, law enforcement wonder, could this .22 caliber pistol be the murder weapon used way back in 1972? It's a gun the Miller owns, but in order to know, you have to examine the bullet removed from Jodie's head, and that bullet has been lost.
The jury is already deliberating at the time of Terrence Miller's suicide. So, in an unusual move, the judge decides to allow them to come to a verdict without telling them that the accused is already dead.
Unaware that Terrence Miller is dead, The jury comes back with a verdict the very next day. They find him guilty of first-degree murder.
They let the jury, without knowing the murder, he'd murdered himself, let them make the decision, and he was found guilty. At least our family was able to hear that. I'm glad that the jury was able to make their decision.
Getting a conviction using genetic genealogy is still a new technique, but becoming more widely accepted in courts. There are now dozens of cases being prosecuted using this approach.
Using genetic genealogy to locate a suspect and then confirming it with 2 DNA samples taken nearly a half a century apart is a huge step for investigators. It shows there is no time limit on justice.
Genetic genealogy. It's another tool in the arsenal for investigators. For the family of Jodie Lumis, it brings a piece of closure on a tragedy that left a 50-year scar.
The one thing that Jodie would want is to give other cold case families hope. I think that would be Jodie's biggest drive.
The only way I think you can have closure is if you could bring Jodie Lumis back and give her back to her family. All you can do as an investigator is do your best to find out the truth, to hold the person responsible for the crime, and to allow the family to have some answers. We do this work to give the family some answers and peace of mind, because I don't think you can ever really give them closure.
With the DNA on the boot that Jodie was wearing when she was found, and the DNA on the coffee cup that Miller casually tossed out, the rape and murder of Jodie Lumis is finally solved.
Seeing that boot again was like, okay, yeah, it doesn't look quite, it had aged a lot. To see it again and to hold that boot and to know that so many things in Jodie's case, so many things have been lost along the way. This person's no longer alive. And then all of a sudden, the boot's what saved the day.